Yep.
Today we've got a great podcast in store. We're going to talk about CrossFit and how it saves powerlifting. So, Marty, in our private conversations, you always tell me, how CrossFit saved powerlifting. Let's get into that conversation. What does that mean?
Well, I don't always say that, JP. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I have written an article about it, and I did point out the fact that until CrossFit came into being, powerlifting was dying a horrible death of neglect. The numbers kept going down every year in terms of participants. Powerlifting is a strange and weird splinter sport, and there's no audience, so everything, all the meets are done based upon the amount of money that can be generated by the entries, and belonging to the federation, things like that. So everybody's on a shoestring budget, and we splintered like boxing, and we broke into, there must be 50 powerlifting federations. Back when I competed back in the day, there was one national championships, one world championships. Can you imagine? What a concept, huh?
Yeah.
Nowadays you have, the world championships of Texas and the world championships of, Oklahoma and the world championships of Rancho Cucamonga, everybody's a world champion. So because of being splintered, also we have a situation where we have a schism between geared powerlifting, which is you put on belts and wraps and suits and you use equipment, which makes the lifts easier. And there was a certain sizable segment of lifters who that's what they participated in. You've seen some of the geared lifting, right?
Yeah, with the bench shirt and
right.
Right. Different gear. Yep.
So anyway, what we call raw powerlifting, which is powerlifting without the gear, was sort of in the netherworld, right? It wasn't really getting a lot of traction. Then here comes CrossFit, and all of a sudden they're stressing squats and power cleans and overhead squats and all these old school deadlifts, all these old school movements that with the rise of the modern health club, gym, spa, machines almost eliminated barbells from health and fitness clubs. Everyone was thinking, free weights are lawsuits waiting to happen. So everyone was trying to get into the machine world. That didn't work. So what the problem with the lifters was that the participation dwindled down to such a small point that the sport was in danger of dying out altogether. All of a sudden, here comes CrossFit, and as CrossFit gained traction, you could see a proportional increase in the participation in the raw powerlifting competitions around the country. It sort of peaked. My friend Brad Gillingham, I believe, told me, this might have been 2 years ago, that at the USAPL National Championships, I believe he told me that the geared lifters were about 60, and they cut off entrance for the raw at 400 or 450. So that gives you an idea of just the onslaught of new participants into the sport. It's revitalized a dying sport. I'm forever grateful,
Right, and CrossFit pushes lifting at its purest form, raw, because there's no equipment used in CrossFit games or anything like that. So, they want to train like how they're going to compete.
And also their lifts are super strict. That has also been a problem in competitive powerlifting because there's been I would call it the judging standards from federation to federation are different, and in the CrossFit they are very, very strict on their definition of what constitutes a lift, and because of that, you look at their squats, their overhead squats, their cleans. They're very clean lifts. right? I'm
Yeah.
very appreciative. I also changed my own personal opinion on CrossFit. You know, originally I had thought that when it first came in, there was a lot of my friends were negative toward it. I have no direct experience with it.
That's right. I haven't either. I mean, we actually sell a lot of different equipment, like bars and bumper plates and rigs and all that stuff. But I've never actually done it myself. I'm old school like you. But you're right. When it first came in, there was a lot of criticism. People saw the kipping pull-ups, and there's still a lot of criticism about that and certain lifts. But I think you're right. I think the actual barbell lifts themselves, the core lifts, the Olympic lifts, and things like that, are just like you said, they're pretty clean, and I know they do work a lot on technique.
I think the main criticism initially was that there were a lot of injuries related to performing the CrossFit protocols, which demand sequence of high intensity, long duration activities, and that it's inherently dangerous to propel and then catch a barbell as you do in a power clean or in a snatch. So particularly if you're injecting an element of fatigue into the equation, and there's also an element of competition, and I think a lot of guys that were going out a little bit too overzealous, and as a result there were a lot of injuries, which I think is really sort of blaming the ultimately you've got to be responsible for your own situation. If you feel like you're in a position where you're going to be injured, you got to pull up, man. Live to fight another day.
Yeah. No, I think CrossFit is great. There's a lot of great things about it, and there is the potential for a lot of injuries if you're not paying attention to form.
Yeah.
And not making that priority, just like anything else, just like powerlifting or whatever.
Absolutely.
You're going to get hurt if you're not using the right form. So
absolutely.
I believe CrossFit is a great thing as long as you're adhering to the form, you've got proper coaching and things like that. And the competitive side of it, the community side of it, it's a great thing for a lot of people. It's brought fitness to people, a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise be interested in fitness, because a lot of things you do in the gym, it's like you're by yourself, and that's not motivating for a lot of people. So this kind of motivates a lot bigger portion of the population, I think. So it's a great thing, but form is number one, just like anything else, and to keep yourself uninjured. Yeah,
I think that the community that you talk about is important. I think also these CrossFit games, they are quite the spectacle. I've been watching them on my local cable television. I like the physiques that it's producing. It's interesting. I guess, has CrossFit been around a decade? I guess they have, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. It's been around, I don't know exactly how far it dates back, but it's
10, 15 years probably, right? Widespread. So what happens after a protocol has been in use and widely used for a decade, you get to see the physiques that are produced by that protocol. And if you look at the bodies of the participants in the CrossFit Games, it's interesting. You have different heights, you have different body types depending upon some people are short torsoed, long legged, other people are short legged, long torsoed, other people are heavy boned, some people are thin boned. So you have all the different physiologic types, but it's interesting how this, I would call what CrossFit does strength endurance. It's a combination of, these are all cardio events in which they inject an element of extreme exertion, some form or another, right? And then they link them together And I love the idea of a guy being able to power clean or squat clean 330 and then walk in his hands. I love that, right?
Right, and now, it's always evolving too. They're always adding new things for the competition, like the air bike or the curved treadmill or whatever, and that's pure cardio. So there's a lot of cardio involved in CrossFit. Just like you said, sustained strength, cardio.
Well, even within the cardiovascular format, you have the glide, or what we call steady state, which is the way a guy runs a mile on a flat track, and they get into a glide status, and they try to have as few muscular contractions as possible, because muscular contractions equate to oxygen consumption. So the less oxygen consumed, the more efficient the glide machine, right?
Yeah.
In CrossFit or in rugby or in football or anything like it's extreme exertion combined with that cardio element, and that works a whole different metabolic pathway. I'm from a pure strength perspective. That's my little pie sliver of expertise is pure strength. Explosive strength would be epitomized by the Olympic lifters. Pure strength would be maximum payload with no regard for velocity. It doesn't matter how fast you move it, it's just how much you can move, and generally low reps. Explosive strength is exemplified by moderate payload, maximum velocity. Olympic lifter, a guy snatching 400, right? It's a moderate payload, it's not 1,000 pounds, and it's moved with maximum velocity. What the CrossFit guys are doing is they're taking moderate to light payloads and maximum all-out duration, all-out intensity. And so it's really covering a base that hadn't been covered before, and that's why they call themselves the fittest athlete. So, all in all, I'm a fan, and again, I really like the quality of the physiques that I'm seeing. Obviously, they're very efficient. It'd be interesting to see what their mitochondria density would be as a result of all their, the type of activity they do. We posted a column on Dr. Len Schwartz recently, didn't we? Is that Len?
We did. Yeah, we did one
on Len
back on 4-limb cardio.
Yeah, and Len pointed out that intense cardio done repeatedly and consistently will construct new mitochondria in the working muscle. The more mitochondria you have in a working muscle, the more efficient that muscle is, the more potential growth that muscle has, the more potential everything that muscle has. And it seems to me that these CrossFit people, with this wide variety, these highly intense aerobic activity combined with the element of strength, I think they are loaded with mitochondria. Ori Hofmeckler had the same thing. Ori talked about the hybrid supermuscle. He pointed back to the ancient rowers in Greece and the Romans, and how the rowing records that they set, like for a Greek trime ship, they haven't been equal to this day. And even though these guys normally were weighing about 145 pounds, it's Ori's contention that because of the type of work they did, pulling on huge heavy oars all day long, they built hybrid supermuscle, again loaded with mitochondria. John Perillo does the same thing with his bodybuilders. He purposely has them do intense cardio in order to suffuse the muscle with more mitochondria. So just an interesting side note. And you look at the physiques, and it seems like these guys are they're strong and they're capable. We love that.
They are. They're like super athletes. There's no doubt these guys and gals are phenomenal athletes for sure.
Indeed.
So, as a guy that's been involved in the strength sports, powerlifting since the 60s, I mean, and you, like you said, you started seeing powerlifting just dying a slow death. I mean, you must be thrilled that CrossFit came along and kind of just rejuvenated everything. This has got to be great for you and everybody else that has so much invested in the strength sports.
Also, it rejuvenated the purest form of powerlifting, right?
Yeah, raw.
Yeah, raw. And the federation that's benefited the most is the federation that has the strictest judging. And they're insisting on squats below parallel, deadlifts totally locked out, benches touched and paused and locked out at the top. No gear.
Which federation?
We don't need to get into all the federations. It's just be a bunch of numbers and letters, and no one would really understand it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. They know who they are.
Yes, they do.
Right.
So,
Obviously, the CrossFitters, the CrossFit individuals feel that there's benefit to subjecting themselves to doses of pure powerlifting. I suspect they're probably doing the same thing in the Olympic lifting. They've probably also pumped up participation in American Olympic lifting, which is really, really, as bad as powerlifting is, Olympic lifting is even worse in terms of participation.
yeah.
It's a real splinter sport. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's true. I mean, we don't have any numbers or anything, but that stands to reason. For anybody that without access to good coaching, like say they're not going to a CrossFit box or gym, maybe they've got some equipment at home and they're looking for some pointers or maybe some coaching for some proper lifting techniques. I mean, how does somebody get access to that? What do you suggest?
Well, obviously, if you have a competent coach in your neighborhood, that's a tough question to answer, man. I mean, I just don't really. It depends where you live. Are you in a thickly populated urban area where you have some possibilities and options? Are you out in the middle of nowhere like myself, where we don't have anything? Can you put a finer point on that?
Yeah, I mean, so out in the sticks where you're at, and say you're an up-and-coming athlete
Okay, so we're talking the power lifts.
Yeah.
Okay, if it was the power lifts, I would, I don't want to toot my own horn, but you would get in touch with someone like me and have me work with you remotely. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, at least that way you'll get good guidance. I'd rather have no guidance than bad guidance, honestly.
Yeah, right.
Because bad guidance, bad technical advice will get a person hurt, and
right.
particularly in the deadlift. Squats are bad, but deadlifts are even worse.
If you scan YouTube, YouTube's a good source for all kinds of information, cooking, training.
Be careful, because you don't know what you're looking at. It's tough to differentiate between somebody whose technique is spot on and someone else who might do a world record, but might do a world record with absolutely abominable technique. The great football player, outside linebacker for the Giants, Lawrence Taylor, supposedly can hit a golf ball 400 yards with some of the worst technique ever seen, right? Whereas Tiger Woods has the best technique ever seen, and he's at about 330. This doesn't mean we should emulate Lawrence Taylor for golf swings.
Yeah, you've got to be very careful. You've got to pick somebody that's very reputable, very knowledgeable, and even at that point, you've got to really just try to, kind of use your common sense and see if those type of lifts are right for you. Make sure you got the right equipment. Make sure you don't rush into it. It's a learning process, but it's form and technique and all that comes very first. We don't want anybody getting injured.
Yeah. Olympic lifting, that's even more technically precise, difficult. I'd really seek out some expert help in Olympic lifting. Power clean is incredibly complex. A snatch, incredibly complex. These lifts take expert coaching and a lot of patience.
There's some great articles out there too, and you have a lot of great articles on our website. You've got King Squat and all that, and it goes through all the different bullet points of executing a proper squat, and you lay it all out. It's so that's very helpful too. A lot of people are visual learners, so if you can find a great coach on YouTube or somewhere, that's helpful as well. So there's a lot of good sources out there, but you have to be very careful. My recommendation, and I think yours is as well too, hook up with somebody local in your neighborhood if possible, that's a professional that can really do hands-on with you and teach you proper form and all that. If you don't have that, call somebody like Marty, send him videos and have him review your form and talk you through it and clean the form up a little bit.
Yeah, remote coaching is light years ahead of where it used to be because of the fact that with the phone videos, we can be right there in the gym. Coaching ultimately is a visual medium. You make your determinations based on what you're seeing, the numbers, and what the athlete feels. And if you have that, if you have the visual impression, which you can obtain through the phone video, and again, we don't need to see all the warm-up sets or anything other than the top sets. We're able to make really, really, really quality judgments and keep our people moving ahead week after week after week. We're working with people overseas. We're working with people that are deployed. We're working with people all over the country, and everybody is getting results because everybody's being held accountable. It's important, right? And again, we don't accept anybody unless their expectations are realistic, right? That's important.
Right.
So, but we work with all levels. We work with stone cold beginners all the way up to world champions. Everybody in between.
Right.
So that's what's going on in the remote coaching world. And again, one more time, we think CrossFit is doing a terrific thing, and it's really helped powerlifting. I, for one, appreciate the hell out of it.
Yeah. You and a lot of other people. All right, so that's how CrossFit saves powerlifting. Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. We got the Kirk bar coming out, right?
We've got the Kirk bar. It's finally done. I'm taking it to the photo shoot on Monday. It's on the site now if you want to check out the Kirk Kowalski approved power bar. It's a great bar. It's a great value. We tried to put together a bar. Kirk had a lot of involvement with this. I said, let's put a bar together that you would have used back in the day when you were breaking records, and this is what we came up with. And it's a great price. It's a USA-made bar. Aggressive knurling. It's a great bar to check out if you're looking for a good power bar. We've also got your weekly column, so we've got a new article that goes up every week.
Indeed.
To find out more about those, just go to our site, ironcompany.com, go to articles, and go to Raw with Marty Gallagher. And if you're in need of any gym equipment, from anything from rubber flooring on up to cardio strength, whatever, check us out for that too. We've got some great equipment, great pricing on there, and we'll treat you right. Marty, you've got a couple of books. You want to talk about those real quick?
Oh, I guess so. I've got Purposeful Primitive, which is sort of our biblical overview of the physical transformation process. I did a book with Dr. Chris Hardy, Strong Medicine, which is more of a generalized health and fitness book. Both of them are available through Dragon Door. So yeah, we're moving along good, and stay tuned and check back in with us.
Yeah. How about online coaching? You're available for that. Kirk Kowalski is available for that. Online coaching and seminars as well. Now you guys are over on the East Coast.
Yep.
So it'd be real easy for a CrossFit box or a powerlifting type gym to have you guys over and just instruct a group of people on even the core 3 exercises.
what we do, how we do it.
Yeah.
Everything
So
comes
you
down.
guys are available for that.
Yep.
And then finally, if we're trying to do this every week, it's not, sometimes it's not every week, depends on what we have going on. But since this is on Facebook, if there's anything that you want to talk about in particular, any subject or person or anything, just drop us a line, send us a quick note via Facebook, and we'll try to bring that up in the coming weeks and talk about that. Other than that, we're done. That's how CrossFit Safe Powerlifting.
All right.
All right. See you later.
Thank you, buddy.